Hi everyone, welcome to Off the Podium. I have someone from LA, which is, as some of you know, that's one of my second hometown, I should say. Fernando Malvar-Ruiz, welcome to Off the Podium.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so you work with the LA Children's Choir, which is one of the great youth choirs in the world. How did you come to LA? I know you were on the East Coast for a while. How did that transition work?
It worked great. I arrived to LA 2 years ago to work with the chorus, but I knew of the Los Angeles Children's Chorus for a long time. Before Los Angeles, I was working with the American Boychoir in Princeton, New Jersey, and we have a music conference. We had a music conference that was done every 2 years for children's choir conductors. And to my very first conference there, I'm talking about 20 years ago almost, the staff of the Los Angeles Children's Chorus came. So my predecessor, Ann Tomlinson, and her predecessor, Rebecca Thompson, they came to that conference and we just hit it off. We started talking similar outlooks on music making, on working with children, synergy everywhere. And so we kept that relationship going. With my previous choir, I visited Los Angeles at least 2 times. And both times we interacted with the Los Angeles Children's Chorus. And then I did a series of master classes with them also some time ago. So my knowledge of this organization was quite deep. And I've always admired from afar what they do in terms of music education, the sound. And now to be a part of it, to be able to participate in this is quite a joy.
And the great thing, which I've come to realize about the Los Angeles Children's Choir, is that it's kind of a young organization. For only an organization that's about 34, 35 years old, it's done a lot. It's impressive.
Well, I mean, the origins of the organization was already an impressive endeavor. The Los Angeles Philharmonic, they were doing a production of Benjamin Britten's War Requiem. Mm-hmm. And of course, there is a treble choir required for this. And there was no children choir in LA, believe it or not. And so Rebecca Thompson was asked to put together a group of children and train them and prepare them for the performance. And they did so, and they had so much fun. It was such an enjoyable experience that the children asked to continue rehearsing and working together. So that's how the Los Angeles Children's Chorus was founded.
Well, now you guys are doing some impressive work. Please talk about how you're dealing with the current situation, COVID-19, and what are some of the things that you're doing with the course?
So there are certain things that are relatively easy to continue, to do online. Music instruction, we have a very exhaustive musicianship plan to train our singers. We have 7 levels of musicianship. It's all Kodai based education. And so that is somewhat an easier transition online, although you have to train the teachers to work with whatever platform you're using. And then you have to train the children to use that platform, although sometimes it's the other way around, right? The children are training you on how to use that platform. That is simple. The hardest thing has been the rehearsing online. You cannot do a rehearsal online. There is nothing right now that would allow you to hear several voices simultaneously singing, and it's just, we tried the other day to sing Happy Birthday for a friend of mine using Zoom, and it was a disaster. And we were all trained musicians, and we off key, off tempo. That right now it's impossible. Maybe somebody will invent something. So what we focused on was on direct one-on-one interactions with the singers. We are posting rehearsal plans online, and those plans are divided in a number of activities. We are asking the singers to participate in those activities and send us the feedback for it, either a video recording of themselves singing or just something written. And that's where we are focusing right now. And it is being successful. The most important part of rehearsing in a choir, I think, not the most important part, but one of the most important parts is the social interaction, right? Choral singing, the beauty of choral singing is to be in the same room with other people, working towards one common goal. uniting your voices with theirs. That's gone in this paradigm. So to substitute for that, we are doing timely Zoom meetings where we can at least see each other and hear each other. Is a meager substitute, but it is working. So a combination of all of that means that we want our singers to continue engaged with music. We want them to feel a connection to the organization and to each other, and that's what we're trying. That's what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Well, the next thing I like asking musicians is about programming. How do you program a season? How do you program a concert? Maybe some examples of what you think about when you program.
So I always want to think of some cohesive elements for a season. I try to escape from the paradigm of choral music as a collection of random songs. And, you know, even if there is a common theme, like flowers, then there's a series of random songs on flowers. And so for a long time, my focus has been on how can we deliver experience to our audience. And it's an experience that is based on choral music, but that transcends choral music. And certainly it's not, and now a song about lilies, and now a song about roses, and all ordered in chronological, you know, order. I just don't believe in that, because what happens is that the audience loses interest eventually. They become disengaged because there's just too many disparate elements. So I try to find what can we do in terms of an experience for them. And to give you an example, we sang a concert this winter, which feels like 10 years ago. This last winter, we sang a concert at the Walt Disney Concert Hall in their Sounds About Town music series. And it was all centered around Benjamin Britten's The Ceremony of Carols. But rather than performing the Ceremony of Carols beginning to end, what we did is we opened up the Ceremony of Carols. So we would sing a movement and then some music that comments on the themes of that movement. And sometimes they are literal themes, sometimes they are a bit more esoteric. And the whole thing goes without interruption. So from the moment we processed in until the moment we processed out, it was about an hour and 20-minute performance, while the Ceremony of Carols is only 20 minutes. So we were able to create something that there is a discourse among 6 choirs and you know, different levels of the choirs and different voicings, and by the end it was a resounding success. People felt that they participated in something different than just, now here's the Ceremony of Carols and now here's some Christmas or holiday related songs.
Yeah. Well, you know, as musicians, we always think about, or as people, we try to think about some of the positive things in our lives. But is there a moment where you were on stage, you were on tour, something happened, and you had to deal with a weird, crazy situation? Now looking back, you're like, oh, that was fun, and it's a fun story. But in the moment, it was terrifying.
Well, I mean, with LACC, I haven't been long enough that I had to deal with that kind of things. Although, you know, in my very first winter concert with the choir, in the middle of a song, the lights went out, and there's just 0 lights, and the singers just kept going. And it was a beautiful moment, because what we were singing actually was a piece that was Mountain Nights, so Totem Kodai Mountain Nights. It's a very ethereal kind of piece. So maybe the lights off was the right call from the muses of music, that and it worked just fine. With my previous choir, you know, we gave an average of 100 performances a year. So a lot of things happened, from children fainting on stage. What do you do? There was one boy that fainted during a live radio broadcast.
Wow.
And of course, no one on the live radio broadcast could see what's happening, but we were able to see what's happening. But at the same time, you cannot stop the performance in the middle of the broadcast. So that was quite an operation. And there was a heart attack during one of the concerts, and the person recovered just finely. And then we all signed a CD and we recorded the video for this gentleman that had the heart attack. And but I mean, as you can imagine, and I'm sure you have experienced yourself, a lot can happen during a performance.
The next question for choral conductors: it's such a tough place to be in certain times, because when it's a choir orchestra collaboration, how do you work with the orchestra conductor? What's the give and take, and some of your experiences with that?
Great question. I've been very fortunate that I worked with great conductors, both in the East Coast and here. I think there are different approaches from the orchestral conductors to a children's choir part. There are the ones that understand what the role is, and you know, the fact that the composer wrote this line for a reason, and they will try to make the best out of that. They are the ones that just see perhaps the choir as a spendable. they're there because they're cute, and so it's hard to help them understand that these children are consummate artists. You know, they are at the same level as the adult choir or even the orchestra players. They just happen to be smaller in size and younger. But in terms of musical sophistication, they are capable as just as much. And to me, when I prepare a choir, it's always wonderful to see that first rehearsal when the conductor hears the sound and then they start asking for things and those things are happening. I can see the conductor's mind starting to change on the spot of, oh, wait, they are actually responding to what I'm doing. What else can they do? And then you can see them pushing the choir to the limits. That's always incredibly rewarding.
I want to know why you wanted to conduct children's choirs and your passion for just youth education and the importance of it. I know it's kind of a big question, but you could maybe elaborate and talk for a while if you want.
Well, I think, you know, I was trained as a pianist. So for all my life, I thought I was going to be a concert pianist. I wasn't entirely happy with the choice. I didn't know that I didn't want to do that. And just at the right time, when I was questioning what I want to do with my life, a choir came into my life. And I realized that I want to do choral music. And so I went to study to Hungary, to the Kodály Institute and the Liszt Academy to hone my choral music skills that were zero. And while there, I was privileged to observe a choir called Cantemus, which is a youth choir, one of the best in the world, and their conductor, Denis Sabo. And we were there to observe one of their rehearsals. And it floored me, what was happening there, the level of sophistication, the music making, the joy in music making, and to see these children responding and embracing with their whole being a process of music making. I had not experienced that level of commitment in any adult situation that I've seen before. And right there, at that moment, I made the decision. I asked to continue to observe, so I was able to observe him working for a full week. I took quite a lot of lessons, and I haven't looked back. Working with children is extremely rewarding. If nothing else, children haven't been told too many times, no, you cannot do this. So they have no limits. Yeah. They really can do, if you set things the right way, if you prepare them for success, they can really succeed at anything. Yeah. Because we as adults, we have heard so many times, no, you cannot do this, that in some ways we are putting ourselves barriers before we try something. Yeah. Mental barriers, subtle or not subtle, direct mental barriers. But children don't have too many of those barriers. So if you cater that carefully enough, the sky is the limit. Yeah. And I can tell you, having worked at all levels, I have worked with adult and children's choirs, with orchestras, with professional orchestras, with amateur orchestras. the level of sophistication, artistic sophistication that children are capable is just as much or more than that of the adults.
Yeah. And I was going to say, it's amazing with children because some repertoire might be new repertoire. For adults, it might be like, oh, it doesn't even sound good, I don't want to do it. With children, if you're excited about it, if you're sharing that passion with them, they're just open to it and they're ready to take it on and just.
Exactly. And also the children are the best truth detector that exists. If you are not truthful, if you are not honest with them, if you tell them that you love something and you don't really love it, or if you tell them that you don't like something and you actually like it, they will know it. So you know exactly where you are with them. You know it in the moment, in the rehearsal, if what you're doing is successful or not, because they let you know. And that is empowering and terrifying, but it's also empowering in a way.
Yeah. Well, you work with a lot of youth and have done for many, many years, and you have a lot of followers who are not youth but follow your career. What's something that your youth musicians or people in general don't know about you that you're willing to share with us?
Well, my choristers know it because I share this with them, but I love video games.
Wow.
I started when I was at the Boychoir. I realized that they were talking about things that I didn't know about, which were, video games and video game characters and leveling up and all of that. And so I decided to buy a PlayStation just to see what were they talking about. And I'm still playing. I love playing video games, I have to say.
So what are some of your favorite games?
I love RPGs. And of the RPGs, I love anything that is, the genre is called Soulsborne, like Dark Souls and Demon Souls. These are extremely difficult RPGs that require, very precise timing and decisions. So those challenging video games are the ones that I like the most.
Yeah. Music is a tough career, and I like to get this from successful musicians like you. What advice would you give to young musicians? What should they just not give up on, not continue? And what advice in general would you give to a young musician starting a career?
So when you're starting a career, it's very easy to be mired into immediate success. If you are not successful tomorrow, or if you fail at something that you're doing, it's time to give up because, I'll never be successful. Life is long. An artistic life is long. And as artists, you can only get better with time. So not being successful right away doesn't mean that sometime down the line you will be successful. And it's surprising sometimes to look back and to think how you were feeling about whatever project you were doing 10 years ago and 20 years ago, and realize that at that time you were not able to see the end of the road. You're just seeing what's in front of you, and if what is in front of you is a rock, then that's all you're seeing, and it's difficult to realize that maybe you can just go around the rock and continue the road. That would be my best advice. Patience. That you get better with time, and success is not immediate success is not a measure of the quality of what you're doing.
When I was reading about you, I realized an interesting background and an interesting birth town as a country. So why don't you tell us and maybe put a geographic location of where the things are so people know?
So I was born in Equatorial Guinea. And Equatorial Guinea is a very small country on the west of Africa. And if you follow the equator line, when the equator line meets Africa, that's the country, Equatorial Guinea, very tiny. And at the time I was born there, it was a Spanish colony, or it was a protectorate of Spain. It wasn't quite a colony. And both my parents are Spanish, and they were there. They met there, they married there, and they had me there. And so I was born there, but I only lived for less than a year because then we left the country. But yeah, that's where I was born.
I don't think I've ever met anyone from that part of the world, or even talked to anyone.
I have met maybe 2 people from Equatorial Guinea.
Wow.
But yeah, for all the pictures and for what my parents tell me, it's a beautiful country, and I would love to visit the country someday. I would love to spend some time there, but obviously right now it's not possible.
What's a composer that throughout your long career that you've discovered and you said, wow, I really wish this composer or this particular piece was performed much more often than it is?
Ah, very, very good question. You know, there's a number of composers in Spain that are producing some really high quality music. And I shouldn't say that they are not well known, because they are either starting to be well known or they are already known. But of the likes of Javier Busto, Josu Elberdin, there is a number of great composers in that regard. I think that only time tells you when a composer is truly masterful. You know, there is the immediate success, things that are very popular right now, and then with the prism of time, you realize that they were not so, you know, not so great. So it's hard for me to look now at composers that are writing music right now and determine how great their music is. There's music that I like and music that I don't like, but that's it. When I look at the 20th century, you know, then you get things like Penderecki, who unfortunately just passed away recently, and there's nothing that I heard from Penderecki that is not truly masterful, writing at that level. So that's where my musical tastes are. This composer is well known, but for a good reason. It's if you ask me to take a composer's music to an island, I would take all the works of Johann Sebastian Bach. And that, to me, there is, and it's been a long time ago, but I don't think the quality of output has been surpassed.
Yeah. Well, you know, I want to know a life-changing moment. This is a question I ask all of my guests, and this could be a life-changing moment that is a musical moment or a non-musical, or maybe one of each.
So it's both, actually. As I mentioned before, I was starting my professional career as a pianist, and I was not happy, artistically satisfied. I loved practicing, I loved learning new music, but I didn't enjoy that much performing it. And just when I was considering changing careers and actually going to a medical school, which would have made my dad very happy, just at that moment, a friend of mine was going on vacation and asked me to substitute for him with his church choir. And when he proposed that, I said, I know nothing about choral music. And he said, well, they don't either. So you're in a good match. And I remember the day of that rehearsal like it was yesterday. And it happened more than 30 years ago. The youngest person in that choir was a church choir. And the youngest person in that choir must have been 65. They couldn't read music. They didn't know how to sing. They didn't sing quite in tune. And I loved every second. I mean, I remember on the subway ride back from the rehearsal when I was going back to my house, just thinking, this is it. This is what I want to do. And my life changed that day, because instead of going to medical school, I made the decision to study choral music, to then go to Hungary, then come to the US, and here I am.
Yeah. And another thing that I think about, especially when talking to educators and people who work with youth, what can we do better as musicians to just promote music education just to the world? I just wish it was everywhere. I wish more people knew about it. I wish when I talk to random people about classical music, they didn't look at me like it's just something that they don't even know anything about. What can we do to just promote it more, I guess?
I think it's important that when you talk about something as powerful and as beautiful and as transformational as music, that we are not elitists about it, because that could turn people off. So the conversation is not, how could you not like this? It's more like, hey, try this.
Yeah.
Isn't this great? Or, you know, as often it's the conversation is, well, you don't know anything about music. You know, you don't like Stravinsky because you don't know anything about music. Well, why should you like Stravinsky? Let me tell you why. Let me point out this. How about this phrase? And look what he does with this. And it's the same with children. You have to embrace that when you're talking to someone that doesn't understand music or is starting to learn about music, that it is not that they don't do that on purpose, that they don't have a dislike of music because they were born with it. So you are trying to help them embrace a wonderful world that you know, and they shouldn't feel bad about not knowing it. They should be excited about all the discoveries that are about to happen. And what I see is a little bit of that cultural divide, that snobbish cultural divide of, well, of course you don't, you know, of course you're not going to like this composer. You like country music. Well, what are the elements of country music that I can apply to this? You know, how can I look at this bass line? It's just the same as Dolly Parton's whatever. You can't find those ways to hook people into loving music. And the other thing is for someone that is used to, it's a really bad analogy, right? But for someone that is used to eating Velveeta all the time, they are not going to like Stilton right away. You have to work yourself up to it, right? So if you give them a big chunk of Stilton and say, eat it and like it and you're gonna love it, they won't. But if you start with something a little stronger and then something, eventually you work your way up. Once you realize how great Stilton is, maybe you don't go back to Velveeta.
Yeah. Another thing for me are mentors, and mentors are such a big part of our lives, and they, you know, they really shape and influence our lives in so many ways. Who are some of your mentors? Maybe even if some of them are from, you know, when you were very young. So just some of your mentors and what they've done for you.
I've been so fortunate in that I've had wonderful mentors and transformational, influential mentors. So there are two kinds of mentorship: the mentorship from afar, somebody you aspire to, and then there's the mentorship in person, the people that really gets into your life and they help you. I've had all of the later. So starting with in Madrid, when I was at the conservatory, a piano teacher called Almudena Cano, she taught me how to play rubato, how to make music, you know, the power of rubato in music. And she really championed me studying music at a time where it was difficult for me. So I owe her quite a lot. In Hungary, Peter Erdei, who was the director of the Kodály Institute, but one of the best choral conductors I've ever seen, period. And he too was very influential. Back into the States, Sandy Matthias, who is a conductor from Columbus, Ohio. And I call her my fairy godmother because she really helped me getting those first breaks, those first jobs. She would be the one that I would call if I didn't know about something. She's a master teacher, master conductor, working with children's choirs. James Gallagher, who is also from Columbus, Ohio, the Ohio State University, he taught me everything I know about vocal music, how to sing, what's going on when something doesn't sound right. I learned that from him and many other things. And then Anton Armstrong, he's been very, again, strong mentor in my career. And finally, James Litton, who's the conductor of the American Boychoir, from that told me after seeing me conduct just one concert, my choir then was the Central Illinois Children's Choir. We were singing with the American Boychoir. We gave a concert together. And after that concert, he asked me to have dinner. And during that dinner, he said, I'm retiring in 3 years. And I want you to come work with me because I want you to be the music director of the American Boychoir.
Wow.
And that's, yeah, and that's the kind of person that he is. And I love him to pieces. So if you ask me to narrow it down to one person, just one person, he might be the one.
Well, thank you so much. I do want to know one last question about LA
Yes.
Children's Chorus Choir. What's the future? What's going to happen next season? What do you have planned? I hope that everything goes back to normal. We can get back to rehearsals and to our daily lives. And ideally, what would happen next season? And what are you looking forward to with the choir?
So the first thing that is going to happen is whenever we get the okay to get together, whenever we can get safely together again, that is going to be a day of celebration. We are going to get together. We're going to sing together, maybe rehearse, together to have a big meal, all of us. And we have 400 children involved in the organization, and then sing for each other and just celebrate that we can finally do this. In terms of next season, we have a season plan. We have the theme for the season is E pluribus unum, which is the motto of the United States, out of many one. And I think there's going to be a need in this country for healing, both literal healing because of the pandemia, but also emotional and cultural healing, right? It's going to be an election year. The divisions are so strong, and so that there needs to be a sense of we are all in this together, and so all the music for that season is being planned that way. And we hope to be able to give concerts the regular way and to continue doing what we're doing, expanding our offerings. I would love for more children to participate in our programs. If nothing else, is because it's going to be so needed. I mean, right now, what's happening is the opposite of what choral music does. Bringing people together, joining in song. Right now, you're isolated in your room with a screen. It's the opposite to the kind of human contact and bond that happens when you sing together. So we are very much working on programs that are going to help us expand that offering to children to all of LA County, and that's what's happening in the near future, hopefully.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. Any last words, anything that you want to add that we didn't get to and you want to talk about or say? Any last words?
No, it's just that, anybody that is hearing this in isolation, that just to recall the times where they were not in isolation, and that will help them envision the future where we can get out of this. When I get desperate and when I get down, I just think back of those rehearsals that I had and those joyous moments in the rehearsal. And it really gives me hope that at some point in the future, we're going to go back to that.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. My guest today was Fernando Malvar-Ruiz, conductor LA Children's Chorus. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
You too. Thank you so much.